Yeah.
Yes, yes, sir.
Do you have a debate challenge?
Yeah. There's actually two. I'm challenging gentlemen to a debate. Um,
Okay.
were you interested?
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Um, so I can tell you what I wanted to debate, and I don't know if you have thoughts or like any experience in the topic.
Hmm.
It was about Islam versus atheism,
Mm.
and I mean the reason I set the room with this title is to actually ping someone very specific to get in here, and I think he's just a bit preoccupied right now. Um, but yeah, if you had some thoughts, I mean, that is, if you go to like my profile or whatever, you'll see like that's something I frequently set up rooms to discuss the topic of Islam.
Okay. Um, I'm not Islamic, but I'm not an atheist. Um, I think I could debate from an atheist point of view. Pretty sure I could. Um, what's the claim that we're debating more specifically?
Yeah, so I uh okay, so this I could tell you like a kind of like background history, but that will get us into like the topics as well. So I think it's useful. So I wanted to debate this other guy who was a Christian on the
Hmm.
topic of Islam versus Christianity. So the topic I wanted to initially focus on is like which one is more ethical or which is moral, whatever. Like I'm not, too, fixated on like what the actual title should be, but something to do with like morality in Islam versus
Okay.
Christianity. And then one guy who happened to be an atheist challenged me, and I just wanted to continue with the same topic. So like the ethics of Islam versus the ethics of atheism. Now the
Hmm.
problem with that framing is um, atheism can't really be compared to Islam because atheism is, depending on like how you view it, it's really just reduced to a single proposition, like the negation of the existence of God, of any God. Uh, so it's so I've tried to make it work where I will say like, well, maybe it has certain entailments which could lead to like certain theories and principles, uh,
Hmm.
which then we use to construct a just and fair society, maybe under principles of like secularism, like a secular state or something.
Hmm.
Um, and then I just try to argue from there, like how that doesn't work. So that's one way to do it. I don't know if you'd be interested in that. But the
Um,
yeah,
it's kind of tough because I mean, morality is kind of subjective, right? Like it's like s- um, by Islamic standards, anything that differs from what Islamic whatever Islam says is right is going to be right, and anything that differs from what Islam considers right and wrong is considered bad, right? It's like because that's your standard, like that's part of the thing. Is like this is our standard. Anything that differs from this is like bad, you know. And but that's just like a framework, and there are different frameworks. Um, I guess how would you like? What's your measuring device for what would make something more or less moral, or something more or less ethical?
yeah, I think we could appeal to like our intuitions. I think like basic like universal principles of like minimize like do no harm, or basic principle of like beneficence, of like helping others and, doing good to others. A basic principle of like justice or fairness, like ensuring everyone gets, fairness. Um, so I think these are, I take to be universal principles. And um, I think these are things that we could all appeal to.
Um, I'm just out of curiosity. I'm doing this. I'm asking ChatGPT using the principles of justice, fairness, doing no harm. What were the other ones you said?
So beneficence, non-maleficence, justice. Um, these, by the way, they happen to be principles that are used in bioethics. So I just like I'm thinking of like the ones that I read in like the literature on bioethics. Actually, I think I mean I got this from a specific textbook, but I think I even recall a long time ago studying this when I took like a bioethics class. But I actually think like these things are universal. I don't think they're just limited to like the space of like medicine.
You said bioethics.
Yeah.
Okay, so I included. I said using the principles of justice, fairness, doing no harm, beneficence, non-malefic, non-maleficence, and the principles of bioethics, which um, moral frameworks um, adhere uh, closest to these principles. Let's take a peek, and then I'm going to add show no bias of any kind. So to show that it's not biased towards my personal beliefs in any way. Let's see what pops up. Um, okay, so they said the closest overall match is this thing called principalism, explicitly built around all of the things that you said, basically designed specifically for medical and applied ethics, used globally in healthcare, research ethics, and bioethics boards. Direct one-to-one alignment with your listed principles, pragmatic and case-based, and allows balancing when principles conflict. Not a full theory of morality, no metaphysics or ultimate grounding, but it also requires judgment calls when principles compete. Um, if your criteria are the standard, this framework is the benchmark. Number two would be deontological ethics. Number three is rule utilitarianism. Number four is care ethics. Number five is virtue ethics. Number six is classical act utilitarianism. And number seven is moral relativism. And then let's do just for fun, let's do the same thing, um but apply it to um religions. Let's see how it let's take a peek. Okay, so number one, the one the the religion that most closely ties with the um, your criteria that you gave me is Buddhism. Um, that the central moral axiom is to reduce suffering. The first precept is to do no harm. Compassion and loving kindness are foundational. That justice as karmic casualty rather than punishment. The strengths are explicit non maleficence, universal compassion, low violence tolerance, and strong harm minimization ethic. The closest alignment to bioethics in principle, especially non maleficence. Number two is Jainism. Um, and it says that nonviolence is absolute. Harm avoidance extends to all living beings. Radical personal responsibility. Strengths. The strongest non-maleficence ethic known is Jainism. Consent, uncompromising harm, consistent, uncompromising harm avoidance, and justice framed as karmic consequences. Three is Christianity, with the strengths of love thy neighbor, care for the vulnerable, emphasis on mercy over punishment, moral intent matters, not just outcome. Um, Four is Judaism. Come on, where's our Islam? Where's our Islam home team? Five is Islam. Five is Islam. Why it fits that your pros for Islam is justice is foundational, charity is obligatory, protection of life um, is an objective. Strengths is clear social warfare obligations, moral accountability, and structured harm prevention in many areas. Limitations is that justice um, subordinated to divine command, harm permitted in legal or religious enforcement, and that unequal application across genders and groups in classical law. Strong communal ethics, but non-maleficence is conditional. And then six is Hindu, and then seven is Confucianism, and eight is Sikhism, nine is Taoism. So that's the list. Uh, looking at showing no bias, ChatGPT's look compared to the how you would rate ethics by your own standard.
Yeah, and I have uh, a like I can understand why ChatGPT would give that answer. By the way, I'm glad you use ChatGPT because I use it for everything, and I think I'm actually like one of the few people I know of in my group who is like an advocate for using it. Ironically, though, like somebody who I was talking to in an Islamic studies seminar was telling me how how it's not useful because it's very like limited. But I'm still gonna be committed to like my view and say I think if you probe it a little bit more, you'll get more out of it than the answer it gave you. And the reason is because like I think what Islam comes with is a rich uh, ethical tradition that is composed of like different parts. So there's like the Sufi tradition. There's also it's the legal tradition, which is very underexplored, even by ChatGPT standards. But I think there are like some cheats to that. Like there's some ways around it. Again, like I said, if you probe it a little bit more, especially if you try to push it to inquire into like the Arabic resources, I think you'll get a lot more in like the Islamic legal tradition, which is Usul al-Fiqh, or in English, I think it would be called like Islamic legal theory. And I think there it has like a rich ethical tradition. But with respect to like when it talks about like how I think the last thing one of the last things you said about like non-maleficence and how it's conditional. But then when you think of like other traditions like Buddhism or Christianity, you know, it's like all there and everything. That's actually a critique I've raised with Christians themselves when I've had discussions about ethics. Because interestingly, I think most people immediately, especially in the West, when they think about like the more ethical religion, they tend to think about Christianity because come on, hey, like Christianity is peace, right? Like if and I've heard this before. I don't know if it was like from Bill Maher, or some other like pundit who said something along the lines of like, you know, if everybody could be like Jesus, we would have no problems. Like this guy was just like a crazy hippie, but he was a pretty cool guy. But when you compare it to Muhammad, this person was like, you know, a warlord and blah blah blah. The funny thing is, I actually take that to be a critique of Christianity because Jesus Christ never really held like state power. There were a lot of things that he didn't really do. It leaves Christian ethics largely limited, and then it takes on it ends up requiring itself to have to fill in the gaps by other ethical traditions. And I think this is why you see Christian ethics draw largely on like Greek thought, Hellenistic thought. Islamic thought did also draw on Greek thought, but there's a very robust discussion and debate that dates back centuries, where Muslim philosophers, many of them, were opposed to Greek thought. So you see the kind of like decolonial stuff that's currently like now a thing in academia, right? It's like a thing in anthropology, it's a thing in philosophy, it's a thing in poli sci, it's even a thing in history, right? The whole like decolonization stuff. That was happening in the medieval period in the Islamic world. Like Muslims were talking about like just throw like we don't need Greek thought, and they were raising the same kinds of criticisms that like postmodernists would raise centuries later. Sorry, anyways, I'm rambling, but my point is the I think Christian ethics is largely limited because of the very nature of Christ and the limited roles he played, whereas Muhammad, even if people want to say like, oh, this guy, you know, he was unethical, or he's not as ethical as Jesus because Jesus believed in peace, absolute peace, right? He wouldn't harm a fly, but Muhammad actually went to war. And I'm here to say, yes, yes, he went to war. And so that allowed Muslim scholars to develop a rich tradition of just war theory. It's embedded in the lifestyle of the prophet and the Quran, whereas Jesus didn't have a lot of that. Jesus didn't get married. So like, you know, marital ethics and family ethics, like all of that is just completely gone. Some people may not find that to be a criticism. That's fine. But like I said, I just think ChatGPT is leaving a lot out. So I can understand where it's getting to that. But I mean, if you want to discuss the specifics, we can. I still stand by like what I'm saying, that Islamic ethics, even with principalism, I think principalism is also largely limited because I actually see Islamic ethics as working very similar to like principalism, but I think it offers like a system of reasoning that allows you to kind of to think like through the principles that you're using and like when to use the principles and how like which principles should override others and in which contexts. It seems to me like because principalism is relatively new, it still hasn't like worked through some of that stuff.
Um, you mentioned something at first, which I kind of want to dive into. You said that ChatGPT can answer um, very differently if you prompt it differently. How would you change the prompt that I made to make it more fair?
I would so I would ask it to kind of elaborate on, but the thing is, so I should say another thing. When I debate atheism, or I debate Christianity, or I debate other like religions, I always say this. Look, I'm here to like present an argument that I think this ethical tradition is superior to other ethical traditions. And if I felt like other ethical traditions were superior, I would just adopt that one. Um, and some people have like argued like, hey, you haven't studied all of them, so how can you make this claim? That's true. I haven't made this claim. This is kind of like more of an exploratory thing. So if you happen to have something, about atheism or some other religious tradition that you felt like, I needed to look at or really felt like undermined Islam in a considerable way, then I would take that very seriously. But I would need you to do that work. I wouldn't be able to. So the reason I'm saying all this is because I can tell you, like, look, I think you can ask ChatGPT to kind of elaborate a little bit more on Islamic ethics, particularly like its legal tradition. But the problem is, like, that would already be unfair because you wouldn't be doing the same for like Christianity or Buddhism. I would assume, like, there's a rich scholarly tradition in all of these different fields. But what I do in my life is I just find, a new person to speak to, whether it's Christian, Jew, Buddhist, atheist, whatever, and ask them about their tradition, and then we can have a discussion. So I hope that makes sense. Like, I can tell you, like, look, probe it by saying, hey, just I need you to specifically elaborate a little bit more on Islamic ethics, like the Sufi tradition, ilm al-kalam, Islamic law, and it can do that. But I think that's already going to be a bit biased, you know?
I'm working on it. You're definitely
Can I
making it. Oh,
can I ask a question to um, Daud?
Yeah, go ahead.
Daud, is logic your weakness?
A lot of, with all due respect, I've had a lot of like people of your background, and I know I'm assuming I shouldn't do that, who would come up here and spew hatred. So I don't know what your
No,
angle. I don't know what
wait,
your angle is,
wait.
but
No,
please,
I mean,
I want to keep
uh,
this
uh,
respectful. So, I didn't, and I'm sorry if I'm like I shouldn't like assume, but that question right there, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. It,
exactly, exactly. You haven't understood the question at all, actually. If so, please let me know that I have not understood the question.
okay, yeah. I can you elaborate on the question?
Sure. So there are a lot of things, right, came in your life before you even learn how to argue. Correct, right? And then since because you want to argue and you can argue, I mean, since you can argue, and this is whatever the teaching told that you can argue, you think that one who has a superior argument wins, right? Correct? Am I correct so far? One
No,
with the
no.
one with the superior argument wins, right? No, then what is the thing? Okay, tell me if I understand wrong something. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, no. I don't. I don't. I don't think that. I don't think.
Okay, so then how would you declare a winner if not superior argument?
Because like the title of the room. I So let's. So I when we argue,
Hmm,
um, let me talk. Let me maybe would it help if I talked? Let me talk about a debate. If we debate, I
hmm,
actually think the benefit of debating is that it helps. It helps like both of us better like work out our views better, like for me personally, I think debating Islam and Islamic morality or Islamic ethics, it helps me to kind of like better articulate this worldview, and better present this worldview. I think for an audience it would help to like it would help to like educate people about certain aspects of Islam they may not be familiar with, or even if they are, I mean, hopefully there is some like educative purpose. But I don't think I don't really see debates as like win or lose, and I know like that's how it's typically done. For me,
okay.
a debate, I win in a debate when I watch a debate if I get useful information from both sides. So if both sides are able to do their position's justice and they have expertise and they did research and everything, I don't really care about who wins or who loses a debate.
Okay. I think you made the statement, right? That this is the, let's say, the Islam. And then if you can show me better, maybe I will follow it, right? Is that correct?
I I don't think like I think when when I present Islam as like a superior, like a moral, it has the superior ethics or whatever. I
Correct.
don't think I don't I don't have much hope in like people following it right then and there. I don't think that's how we work as human beings. So I think maybe I don't know if you're talking about like how we're accessing truth. Like I don't think this would demonstrate it's true to you. And I think what becomes convincing to you is like the things that you experience, but not like not arguments.
Okay. So when you say that, right, let's say Jesus did not have a wife and kids, right? So his point of view could be very less compared to Muhammad, who married as well, right? And then have a social insight as well, right? So is this, if not comparison, right, of the limits of the religion, in now we're talking about religion itself, what it is then? Because that religion doesn't need to say that you must be married, right? And because your comparison is based on that, and you say you have a limit and I don't. If it's not comparison, then what it is? If there's no winner and loser, then what it is you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it is yeah, so I want to if I understand like so when I understand like winner, you know, maybe I just don't understand what you mean by winner and loser because I do think one I think in a debate like I can argue that one is better. Um
Okay,
but I don't think it's like like a loser in the sense of like saying, "Oh, there's really nothing worth thinking about in this other position, or we should just kind of throw it away, or it's absolutely false." I wouldn't commit to any of those claims.
thank you, thank you. So when you say this is better, right? Let's say you think Islam is better, right? Why you would not follow some of the principle of the, let's say, Hinduism or Jainism or Buddhism, right? Because they are also there and they may also provide something useful, right? So unless you think one is absolutely better than others.
Um, I want to hop in real
Sure,
quick.
sure.
Um, I just want to confirm a prompt, and then I'm happy that I'm sure that he would love to answer, but I just want to confirm that a prompt would be good for. Is it Dawood?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so this is the prompt that I have. I'm speaking uh, uh, to someone that believes that Islam is the best ethical framework, and particularly the Islamic legal framework. He has told me that his standard for the best ethical framework should be judged on the principles of justice, fairness, doing no harm, beneficence, non maleficence, and the principles of bioethics. Do a deep dive of how each of the top ethical frameworks that you chose previously compare specifically with Islam using the judgment standards mentioned above. Show no bias towards or against any religion or ideology.
Yeah, I think that's good. So I want to add a few things. You don't have to add this in the prompt, but just to
Well, I'm going to.
all right. Well, like just for clarification. So when I said like the standards of like you know non-maleficence, beneficence, and things like that,
Mhm.
these are like universal principles. They don't have to just be these principles, but I mean like they could be any kind of like universal principles that you know we feel like guide our moral lives, right? So for example, I said non-maleficence, but that's because I was really like thinking about bioethics, and you know, non-maleficence is like a good principle to use in bioethics. Of course, is in addition to like everywhere else, but um, yeah. But if I have not if I didn't even think about that, that doesn't mean like we're only looking for certain principles. Like for example, the principle of utility. I don't think I even mentioned that, but that's another bioethical principle. The point here is that it's not just reduced to these principles. But what I meant, what I, I was giving you each of these principles to give an example. What I meant is like the standard that we use to determine like, what is right or wrong would be like these kind of universally shared principles. It can't be like limited to a certain number because I'm honestly not sure like how many principles they would be, right? The other
Well,
thing,
it's your standard. I'm not. I think it's better that you give me the standard in which you're judging, not not that I give you a standard or whatever. That we're using the standard that you give me. So I'm judging the best ethical framework based on right now. It's justice, fairness, doing no harm, beneficence, non-maleficence, and the principles of bioethics and universal principles that guide our moral lives. Do you want me to add or remove any of that?
well, if it's just my standard, why couldn't I say something like, um, the best ethical system would be one which appeals to Islam?
Okay, well then it would just be your framework is being judged just is it Islam or not? Or how closely does it adhere to Islam? Of course Islam is going to be number one, right?
Yeah, why would that be an issue?
It's not. I mean, but I wouldn't need to do all this work of like of doing this like huge prompting and all this stuff. If you just started with that of just like, hey, I'm I'm using my standard of what I'm using to judge any standard is how much does it adhere to Islam, and that's it. I think that isn't what you told me at first.
Yeah, I know, but so what is the issue with that?
Well, for one, you change your story. I think that's kind of an issue. Um, I mean, I guess there's no other issue. You're more than you're free to have any standard for your ethics in your life, and you can choose Islam or any framework. I don't see any issue with that. But I do see an issue with like, hey, like I asked you very specifically, how do you judge what would be the best ethical framework? And you told me, you gave me an answer of, you know, it should be judged based on justice and fairness and doing no harm uh, and all these other things. And now you're like, oh, well, actually, it's just how closely does it adhere to whatever Islam says?
Yeah, because remember, if you're saying like if it's just if you're saying like these are just my standards,
Yeah, your standard.
yeah, then I can just say like, well, whatever just appeals, whatever adheres to Islam. But that's not what I'm trying to do in like a debate or a discussion, right? What I'm trying to do is say, look, we're having a discussion. I'm not appealing to Islam because I know you don't believe in Islam. What I'm trying to say is like, look, I actually think this is a superior moral framework. Now, we have to have a shared understanding. So the reason why I said like, hey, why would it matter if I just appeal to like Islam? And you rightfully said like, look, this is kind of like just like circular and like ridiculous. And you said like, I'm kind of changing my mind. You're right. I think like, when we're having a discussion, we would appeal to certain norms like consistency, to like, these externally shared values. I mean, one of which is like consistency. We both believe in like consistency. So I'm trying to appeal to like other things like that. If you felt like non-maleficence was just a bad idea, a bad principle, then we could throw that out. And that's why I didn't want to get bogged down on like, particular principles. But I actually think that, you and I and Ashish, us three, we would agree like justice is a good idea. Like maximizing well-being is a good idea. Minimizing harm, especially of like innocent people and whatnot, is a good idea. So now, if you're just saying like these are my principles or values, I mean, I can just reduce this to like, well, Islam is really just my value. Anything that conforms to Islam, is fine by me, and anything that doesn't, I just throw
Is
out.
bad. It's like a bad thing.
I think that one question, right, on the name of justice. Do you think the world is justice? The man kills the
Sorry,
goat, but
we
God
can't.
kills
I can't hear you, Ashish.
oh, sorry. So I think if justice is a good idea, really, I think the man kills the goat doesn't kill the man. Where is the justice here,
Ashish,
right?
kind of didn't. I didn't quite catch that. I think you're a bit low.
Oh, sure. Okay, 1 second. Is it okay now or not? Tell me if it is okay. I have to change otherwise something.
If I
It's
if I like try and listen hard,
one
hear
second.
you.
Is it okay?
There was an earlier
Is it
question that you asked.
yeah?
And
Is it better now?
I think so. But by the way, there was an
Is
earlier
it
question
better
you
now?
asked that I wanted to. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
let me just answer the earlier
Sure.
question that you
Yeah.
asked about different
Mhm.
religions, because I think it was a good question. And I would just say to that, like, you're absolutely right. So the funny thing is, I'm not gonna pretend to, like, I'm not trying to make this claim. I know that's what I'm essentially doing, but I'm not trying to like pretend as if I've studied all religions. I know like some people say that. I definitely did not. So I'm open to, like, if you want to present a case for like Buddhism, we can talk about. I actually would be interested in that because I don't think I engage with Buddhism at all. So we can talk about that. I can present what Islam has to offer. You can present Buddhism, and then we could talk about that. I mean, it's not gonna, we're not gonna be changing each other's minds, honestly, like today, but it's something that I'd be willing to like walk away with and think about, as I think about my own work and what I do.
Okay, okay. So my point is that is there any establishment that says this is better than this, right? And that's why I say the very first question is logic your weakness? Because if you have a logic, you'll say this is better than this, right? Your entire thought process will be guided by some logic. If the logic is your weakness, right? So because before you started to argue, you really happened. Your body really happened before you started to argue, before you started to compare, right? And I like to draw you to that time period where everything was beautiful for you.
But so I'm gonna be quite honest. I don't think I understand where you're getting at, but let me just say one thing. I don't actually, I don't give a lot of power to like arguments. Um, so I don't want you to view me as like, when you say logic, I mean, it may be my weakness. I don't know what you mean by that. Like, I don't think like logic is like the superior instrument. Um, I think like, there's this good book that you should read, Stephen, you could even put it through like ChatGPT. It's a very interesting book, The Enigma of Reason. And in this book, it like challenges the assumption that philosophers have, where like reason, like our minds, like, when we reason, there's this idea like reasoning helps us to access truth. Actually, the book challenges that thesis, and it argues like when we reason, what we're actually doing is just like the main tool of reasoning is to articulate like our thoughts, or articulate beliefs that we've already accepted prior to reason. I think that's interesting because it actually aligns with like my intuitions and like a lot of the things I've read and like explored and like psychology and everything. It seems to me like, and then there's also the idea of like us being bad reasoners. So this book really goes through some of that stuff, and I think I kind of align with like their thesis. So again, I don't give like this great amount of power. Like I respect reasoning, and I think that's a great thing that we should do and stuff. But like, and I think it's great for debates and like presentations and like exposing weaknesses. Oh, by the way, that was another thing. Like they said, reasoning is actually useful when it comes to like exposing other people's weaknesses, but we rarely ever expose like we can't use reasoning apparently. And I might even be misrepresenting the book. to like expose our own weaknesses. So this is why it becomes helpful to like discuss with others, right? Because other people can point out the flaws in your reasoning better than you can, much better than you can. So I don't give a whole lot of power to like, I don't know if you're saying, if you're trying to like attribute to me that the idea of like me giving this great amount of power and authority to like reasoning or argumentation.
But yes, yes, exactly. That is exactly my point. Um, because I think the you could be smart, right? And I mean you can argue, and then somebody can consider you smart because, as I say, you can articulate your existing belief system smartly. And then, since you're expressing any expression that could be mistaken for the truth, so I would like to see that if uh, you can see the world before reasoning, right? Of the, let's say, superiority. Because I guess we live in the world that is before I live in the world before I started to argue. And that is the real world for me. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm kind of unsure where to go from here because I mean, if you're looking to debate, Islam versus other faiths, I'm happy to do that. But when you say that your measuring stick is how well anything just adheres to Islam, um, well, I can shorten it for you and just say that Islam wins because Islam is the only thing that's Islam, and anything that differs from Islam isn't Islam, right? Like it just, but that doesn't say anything as to, it doesn't address superiority in any way. It just says that, well, Islam adheres to Islam the most.
No, that's yeah, that's absolutely correct. But that's why I think it wouldn't. So I was reducing it to that. If the condition is um like what is it superior to in virtue of like my subjective standards, it would seem like ultimately like meaningless. That's how I feel. I mean, sometimes it would be interesting for people to even know that. But if we're saying like no, it's not just about like what feels right to me or like what is superior to me, but rather like what all of us could agree to would be superior. So like even just right now when you said like you don't think it's truly superior, then I guess I would ask like why, and you may say like well for some of these reasons, and if I shared those reasons then I'm willing to go with that. Like I think that would be the benchmark, those shared reasons. I'm probably nuts, but like if you so you feel like look I'm appealing in a kind of circular way to like to like Islam, justifying Islam. In no sense does that mean it's superior. I actually so I think we're
By what measuring stick? What is your measure of what makes something, any faith, superior to any other faith? How could someone take two faiths, independent of whether it's Islam or anything else, two faiths, and see by what measure are you looking at which faith A or faith B? How are you measuring which one is superior?
um for me it's like by virtue of Islam. But that's but 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 that's why I said like I think it's
Then there's no debate here. Do you see the problem?
presenting it. You shouldn't present it that way. Like you shouldn't ask me. Maybe I'll put it a different way because I'm probably not like connecting well. One of the main reasons I'm Muslim, like as much as like we try to present Islam and stuff like that, you know, and even apologists and stuff, the main reason why I'm Muslim is largely due to the fact that I was born in a Muslim family. I grew up Muslim. I mean, that is deeply fallacious, but you can't take, no one can take that away from the fact, like, it's kind of like what I said about this book, The Enigma of Reason. I think much of the reasons why we accept things is for like psychological, like social, it's like external, and many times like fallacious reasons. But that's different than like justification. Like when we argue with each other, debate or talk, or, you know, we're looking for justifications. And that's what I take you to be asking for when you're saying like, okay, and like, what's my benchmark? But I think where you're falling short is you keep reducing it to my benchmark. It wouldn't be my benchmark because justifications are universals. So the question is like, what are the justifications? Not like what are my own subjective justification, because then again I could just like say like what's Islam, and the funny thing is that's actually a fact that really is like that's kind of like how I grew up, and that's I could try and pretend as if like I have these rational proofs and like, oh, you know, I kind of like reason through Islam, but how do I know? How do I really know? I mean, if I was born Christian, it's probably a good chance I probably wouldn't be Muslim. I
Yeah,
have to
you'd probably be Christian.
yeah, I just have to admit
And you'd
that.
probably think Christianity is the one and only way.
Right, right.
So this is what I don't understand. Help me understand this. That being you, understanding that you're probably Islamic because your parents were Islamic and you grew up in this Islamic family and you were fed Islamic dogma and you were taught all of the reasons why Islam is better than every other faith. And you can also see millions and if not billions of other people that simply believe that their faith is the best for the exact same reasons that you have, right? That they grew up in their faith and that they were taught all the reasons why their faith was better than every other faith. And yet, and if you asked them which is the best faith, which is the morally superior faith, they would argue it's the faith that they grew up with, and they would give tons of logical reasons to back it up. And when in actuality, it was really just because it was the one that they grew up with. How can you, knowing all of those things, still believe that Islam is superior?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I think that's not the problem because I think we could just believe it all the time. I think, but maybe, but you did say like knowingly. If you mean like justifiably, you know, I think so. One of the ways is like by challenging, engaging in discussions, like challenging your beliefs, kind of like what I'm doing now, like us having a discussion. I think that's the best way. I don't think you ever really know, to be honest, but this is like as good as it gets, unless you guys can think of like something better. But like challenging your idea is essentially the best way to know. I think people are gonna believe people are gonna believe whatever, no matter people will like not challenge their beliefs and still like believe what they believe. And they'll be perfectly fine. And they'll live in this world like perfectly fine and everything. But I think it becomes very hard to like live in this world if you are always like challenging your beliefs, especially if like people are poking so many holes that you're bound to like change your beliefs. But to be honest, I don't really know like how human psychology works. So I don't know like if there are like other ways in which people kind of make sense of those things. But again, going back to like what I said, I think the best solution is to try your best to engage with others, challenge your beliefs. So I believe Islam, you know, is I think it has a superior ethical framework. I'm not just sitting at home and telling my relatives and, you know, staying in my own like echo chamber. I'm going out. I do this in public. I do this like in person, and I do this online, and I try to interact with as many people and diverse people as I can. So I've engaged with Christians. That's what I said to their faces, like, "Hey, I think my thing is superior than yours, and then let's talk about it." And I do that with other people as well.
Well, if your
What, what,
superiority,
what? Okay, yeah, yeah, exactly. That's one quick question. Why you think your religion is superior? Why you want to debate that with other people? I mean, Why don't you see your religion as your religion and others' religion as other religion? Simply, why you are out there to prove your superiority?
I think you already answered that because Islam is the most Islamic.
Yeah, so I think so again, I don't know like how other religious traditions like Buddhism and stuff, I don't know how they have I really don't know much about these traditions. I don't even think I honestly know much about Christianity. Um, but when it comes to like secularism, I think my grounds to say like it's superior is in the fact that I actually think much of the entailments of like secularism leads to much problems, and I see an Islamic framework as being able to resolve some of those problems. So that's where I think it's superior.
Agree, but why do you want to say that to the world that I'm a superior? I mean, this is like kids are saying that my mom is the best mom of the world. And I think I have heard enough, from each kid who has their own mom.
My mom is not only the best in the world, but I'm using if my mom matches the behavior of my own mother, that's what I'm using to as my measuring stick of what makes the best mom.
Yeah, yeah,
If my mom acts, if anyone, I'm measuring everyone else by whether or not they behave like my mother as what defines the best mom to me.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not I'm not saying Stephen, I explained this like 3 times. So I think like I'll just let people listen to the replays. And it could be the case that I'm not explaining it well. But Ashish, I think the reason why is because like these frameworks largely affect how we're gonna live our lives. So if you're talking about like a framework that really has nothing to do with anyone, so it's kind of like when I going back to Christianity, where I felt like, it could be like it could be largely incomplete. And you could just say to yourself, like, look, Jesus was a great guy. He died on the cross. He's the Lord and Savior, and I'm not going to do anything with that. Like, there's no plan to kind of like, govern institutions with that. Even even like, organize my family around that or anything. It's just something that I believe, and it just doesn't. I mean, I actually don't even buy that picture of like the human being. But these things, these principles, these values, these frameworks, these views, they have an effect on like how we live, how we interact with each other, how we govern things. So that's why I think it is worth. It's not just as simple as saying like, oh, my mom is the best mom. No, but it's like, you know this person, this politician that I'm voting for is like the best candidate, and that has implications because like this person is, whether this person takes political office, it's going to affect, how we live.
I think
I think
um,
it is important. I mean, I think
you
people, yeah,
wait,
sorry.
wait, wait. So okay. So this is my point, right? I mean, you follow because you're born in this Islam, right? And uh, you can say that I follow whether other people are, limited or not limited. Why that is your concern at all? I mean, there are like, let's say, I'm a Hindu, and then there are 1 billion Hindu, right, in India. So do you accept that there could be 1 billion Hindus, which could be inferior? Because this is, you're directly telling that there are 1 billion people follow the faith that is not complete. That is exactly what you're saying. Why
Okay,
why why you need to say that? What is your need to say that?
good question. So first, let me say, so, and I'm beginning. I think I kind of get where you're coming from, which is
Hmm.
which is very noble. I think it's good. But let me say this. So, okay, we have like these values, and it's based on these, like, we're not governing our state, our country, our society based on, we're not just governing them arbitrarily, right? It's not like, hey, whatever goes, tomorrow we just feel like racially discriminating, so let's do that. And then the next day we feel like just giving people like welfare checks, so let's do that. No, we have like we have like different principles, values, it's based on like this kind of framework that we have, and we use that to like govern society, right? Now, you're saying like, why not? I think, you're talking about like, what about like letting people live? Hindus, yeah, we can let people live. But the question is, what principles should govern society? And we can't just say, I mean, I don't think you would say like, oh, anything, right? They would have to be like, there are certain principles that we shouldn't use to govern society. Like, let's say Nazi Germany, like whatever principles Hitler had. Oh, I just realized that guy left. Oh no, you're still here. Oh, okay, Ashish. Yeah, so so we wouldn't. So you would agree, right? Like there are some principles we just wouldn't we wouldn't appeal to.
See, there are the principles, right? There are like, let's say certain countries have capital punishment as the punishment, and certain other countries have not, right? So there are like maybe couple hundred countries, and they have their own rules, right? So they can their own framework. Even the family to family, there are different rules, right? There are no common rules actually within every family. And there are certain people who say curse word are okay. There are certain other people who say curse word are not okay, right? What is your standard here? Because there are so many things that you can decide on one-to-one base, right? And say this is okay and this is not okay. For some people, it could be okay. For some people, slang is okay. When they meet the friend, they speak slang every time. I don't like slang. So even if somebody come and say slang word to me, I say, stay away. You cannot become my friend because you say slang word.